Well, some daycare owners are using religion to dodge state regulations. And as Fox 10 News investigative reporter Renee uncovered, it's legal. So Renee, talk about how that's possible and also what kind of a threat could this pose to children in those unregulated daycare facilities?
Alabama is one of a handful of states in the country that allow daycare facilities to operate without a license or regulation if they claim a religious exemption. Now, whether it's a church affiliation or just a proclaimed ministry, you have no assurance that anyone is checking up on them, and your child's safety could be at stake. The state revoked the license for Toddlers Academy on Mill Street in January. A Mobile judge who upheld the decision in July cites multiple violations in online court documents. The judge concluded the daycare altered and falsified documents submitted to DHR for employees, including one worker with a record for child abuse and neglect. There were also safety violations involving daycare vehicles. I talked to owner Jacqueline Burrell by phone. However, she has not responded to my request for an interview. I also talked to one grandparent who apparently didn't know the daycare was no longer licensed. Is it licensed?
Yes.
Do you think that's important that daycares be licensed?
Yes, it's very important.
Why?
Because, I mean, if anything's happened, you know, you'll always have someone you can fall back on if they're licensed.
Instead of shutting down after losing its license, Toddlers Academy changed its name to Donaldson Ministries. It's what the Department of Human Resources says an increasing number of daycare facilities are doing when they get into trouble with state standards.
They apply for an exemption status in the faith-based exemption.
DHR Assistant Division Director Janetta Green says once a daycare claims a faith-based exempt status, the state does not check the claim or the facility unless there's a criminal complaint of abuse or neglect. And what about the violations that led to the facility losing its license?
A parent can't be assured at that point that those things are not still happening.
Right now, there are 89 exempt daycare facilities in Mobile County and 62 licensed facilities. Baldwin County has 42 exempt daycares and 35 licensed facilities. In Mobile County, church-exempt daycares are supposed to be inspected. It's a policy adopted by the Mobile County Health Department and approved by the County Commission as a result of concern over exempt daycares. Now, Mobile County is one of only 2 in the state that even bothers to look at exempt daycares. The death of 2-year-old Amaya White, who was left in a church daycare van in 2005, was part of the catalyst for the county's decision to inspect daycares.
Before we started going in there, no one was going in there.
According to Senior Inspector Brad Phillips, Mobile County's requirements are not as stringent as the state inspection requirements for licensed daycares.
So making sure in cribs, make sure they meet the federal guidelines.
But Phillips says they are based on the state's minimum standards.
There are a few things that we couldn't put in there, like enforcing ratios, children to teacher ratios and some things like that.
I asked Phillips how parents can find out if an exempt daycare has been inspected by the county and the results of that inspection.
It's supposed to be posted out where people can see them, or if the parents ask for them, they should have it posted somewhere on a wall. They have a notice of violation.
Phillips put Good Shepherd Daycare in Theodore on notice following a recent inspection for violations that include inappropriate evacuation cribs, leaving a child unattended, and having weed killer left in an area accessible to children. I contacted the daycare director, Michelle Souther, who says the violations have been corrected and the facility is scheduled for re-inspection on December 1st. Some parents on the Gulf Coast know firsthand what can go wrong at an unregulated daycare.
And this is where the pole landed.
Jeanette Turner contacted Fox 10 News in May after she says her 9-year-old daughter was left with a mild concussion and a bruised eye as a result of an accident in a minivan owned by the Greater Praise Daycare in Whistler.
She came home. I called immediately asking what happened.
It was her child who informed her about the accident, which the daycare failed to report to parents or police.
Our protocol is, number one, you have to call the police. You have to do that. That's our protocol. Listen, that's some best to act my lawyer.
The federal government is now taking steps to improve safety at exempt daycares. Starting this month, those that receive federal or state money must submit to inspections. However, DHR says while it's a step in the right direction, it won't affect half the exempt daycares in Alabama which don't receive federal subsidies.